Screaming, how's it hanging? How's it happening? You guys know this is Kevin from the Chord Progression Podcast, sponsored by Dark Future Systems, the best custom computing technology built for anything, whether it's gaming, music, creative, work, whatever you want. Dark Future Systems has the build for you. You know who uses Dark Future Systems to stream all their stuff? Ryan Kirby from Fit for a King. So yeah, go check him out in the description of the podcast. Use the code CPPOD to get $100 off your entire order. Make sure you go and do it. I got to get me one of those computers sometime soon. Trust me, it's on the way. So, yeah. Now it's time for a feature presentation. We have talked with Cody Frain of Ascent Like Wolves, if not for me, and the difference between before. But he runs the label Theoria Records. And now it's time. Let's dive deep into the whole record label process and why working with a developmental label as a young band may just be the thing for you. Are you guys ready? Let's go! Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, listeners of the Chord Progression Podcast. If you checked out our episode with Ascent Like Wolves literally a week ago, you saw and heard this guy talk on the podcast. Why? Because he's the drummer for the band, but why is he back is the real question. Well, the band's label, Theoria Records, is this guy's record label. And we've brought you some of those bands beforehand as well, along with Aphasia, Colony Collapse, the difference between, and when they had If Not For Me on the label, we brought him on there too. Now that If Not For Me is with Invoke, and he is in the band as well, we brought him back on. So you know this is going to be a good one. We get to talk about an actual record label that is helping push new music into the ears of many. So please welcome back Mr. Cody Frain of Ascent Like Wolves, If Not For Me, and Theoria Records. So Cody, my man, welcome back.
What's going on, man? Always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for letting me rant to you again.
Oh, always a pleasure. I think that, this is like maybe your fourth or fifth time on now, literally second time in a week, dude. This is absolutely insane. And now we get to actually talk like about a record label, talk to a record label, not just the bands, talk to the actual label, even though, it's still you, but just like, this is wild, man.
For sure. Appreciate it. Yeah, down to talk about anything you want to. So
okay, so first thing is because it still blows my mind the fact that the first time I ever knew about you was as the drummer for Ascent Like Wolves. More things coming around there, and then I remember getting an email from you like, "Hey, started this record label called Theoria Records. We've got all these bands. You want to help, promote them and help interview them?" Absolutely, I was down for it, but it just is so insane that you started your own record label. So walk me through the superhero origin story, man, of this. Like, I want this origin story to be better than Iron Man. The first Iron Man.
Well, I don't know.
Not two or three. But we're not going to talk about those.
Agreed. But yeah, so where'd Theoria come about? So I've been playing in bands, booking shows, kind of all stuff involved around that since I was 14, 31 now. So I definitely have my share of experiences in the music industry. But yeah, around like 2016, I joined Ascent Like Wolves a little bit before that, but we put out the album For the Future, and we signed to the record label Weird Triumphant and Maxstream Records over in Japan. So I got like my first taste of what a record label is all about through all of that. And I just really, ever since I started music, I love like the behind the scenes of how does music get to the listener, and all that stuff that people don't really talk about or know. It's like, how do you get a CD into a store? Or like, how does a band get on a tour? All that stuff. It just doesn't miraculously happen at all, which some people think it does. So yeah, I was involved with that, and then Ascent Like Wolves started wanting to tour more and started to have more interest to start booking shows outside of our state. So we didn't have a booking agent at that time. Booking agents are kind of hard to come by, especially if you're a smaller band, a smaller developmental band. So I started just booking all of our tours, which in turn I started booking shows around my hometown. I started a company called Recovery Promotions, which was like pretty much me just like reaching out to a bunch of other DIY promoters all across the state of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is huge. Actually, you could book like 3 different shows within Pennsylvania and not have them hit a radius clause, which is pretty nuts. So what I tried to do is work around Pennsylvania with other promoters to just kind of like book like small tours and stuff, like weekenders and stuff, or something like Wolves. And with that comes show trades. And before you know it, we're booking all on the East Coast. Yeah, so I was doing Recovery Promotions for a while. Then after that, I actually got picked up by this company called CI Productions and CI Records. You might know some bands from them. August Burns Red started with them. Texas in July, Carousel Kings, bunch of awesome bands that came out of the Lancaster, Pennsylvania area. So I got to work as the label director for them for a while. Um, and then yeah, I was doing that for a bit, still booking shows with Recovery, still playing in Ascent Like Wolves. Ascent Like Wolves doing more touring. I'm doing more booking. I started working with this company called Wavelength Agency, which is a tour booking company. So I'm working with more and more bands now, expanding what I can do, just kind of testing different things out. And then um, come like 2018, I started working for, I left CI and I started working for We Are Triumphant actually as an A&R there. And then a little bit before that, I met my business partner. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it today. His name is Chris Wethington. Actually plays in the band Soft Spoken. Um, a sick band, but yeah, so him and I were always like really into again like the music behind the scenes and became really good friends. And it's like 2020 now. Him and I started talking about potentially making a company for like developing bands, and with that became Theoria Records. So I ended up leaving Weird Triumphant just to end up becoming an imprint label of them. So with that is pretty cool because I got to use the Orchard for distribution, which is also owned by Sony. So it went from like starting a label with DistroKid to starting a label with the Orchards and all the power behind all that, which was really cool. So yeah, then this Theoria started in 2021 in June, and we're almost going to be 3 years old this coming year, and it's pretty crazy how many releases we've had so far. We've had about 24 bands go through the label so far. Right now, 12 of them are active, and mainly it's just what's cool about Theoria is like Chris and I both have the empathy of an artist. Like a lot of labels and a lot of industry people, I think, lose sight of what the artist actually goes through and all the struggles behind that. Like how hard it is coordinating with a band, because with a band you're involved with four other people potentially. It's like a big group project, and with that becomes you almost have to be a project manager. Um, and just dealing with all those different personalities, all the struggles that bands go through. Like Chris and I understand that. We've also been through really awful shady deals on our own, and saw the really bad side of the industry. It's so we just kind of know how to navigate a lot of situations that are like really artist friendly. And we also something I didn't like with some of the other labels that I worked with is I didn't have a lot of autonomy to really develop and coach a band and fund a band like I wanted to. I was kind of just at the liberty of whatever their deal was. And so what's cool is with Theoria, I got to have my own autonomy to do obviously whatever I want with bands and really develop them, which I would say Theoria is more of a developmental label. Like we're not just there to just distribute your music. We're here to coach you. We're here to be a pseudo manager if you needed a pseudo booking agent. Like we do PR, we do marketing, we do all that ourselves. And like I have a group chat with every one of the bands. I try to have weekly or bi-weekly calls with them, just especially when they're in an album cycle, just to be their full support system. Because both Chris and I know what it felt like on being on labels and on management teams that didn't really support you like they said they were going to. Just kind of put out your music. So we just try to be a lot more than that.
See, now, that makes a lot more sense to me than I initially thought, and kind of resonating that with myself too, because even outside the podcast, I'm this is not my full-time gig yet. I have to preface that with
you got it,
but put that yet in there. But like working in corporate America too, I kind of gone through the exact same thing. And I feel like a lot of people listening, a lot of people can resonate with that, where, you're in a working environment and you're working for somebody, have a manager or something, and it's just not working out. And there's certain things that you just cannot stand about that. You cannot stand about the situation. You can't stand that, maybe they're not understanding what you've gone through. And then with my standpoint, now I'm in a different position within the company that I work for, where it's like, yeah, I am leading people. I do have some people that are directly under me. And my thought was exactly like yours is, okay, I've been through this certain things. I've been through these things. And especially from your standpoint, you've been through these things that artists have been through. You've gone through all of this, and you're going to end up taking the reins and thinking, what can I do that if I was in this position that would help them out? What can I do that's going to actually have more of an impact than just, okay, maybe throw some money at it, or just because your deal doesn't have this exact specification, we're throwing you to the wind because we'd rather promote this other band due to the fact that, they're just making more at the moment, even though the band that you're talking about that you want to give more to could make so much more in the future. Again, there's always those different plays there. But the fact that you have this innate and mindset and this embedded mindset of the things that you went through, and having compassion for the artist as well, especially because when it comes to music, music is art. It is art without a shred of doubt. And art is an expression of our own human emotion. So when art has to be a business side of it too, you kind of got to be able to play both sides of it, and knowing where you're coming from as an artist, having that background, you're going to help out so many more bands in the process just by doing that and having that mindset, which is why having Theoria as more of that developmental label that's going to help out these bands is going to make it something that people are going to want to come to, and younger bands are going to want to come to, because they're going to hear and see about all the great things that you're doing with the bands that you work with and see them as they continue to grow. Maybe if they go to other labels that are going to be much more of this funding and just pushing them even further than you guys possibly could at the moment. Now, again, I say at the moment because who knows, you guys could become one of those labels in the end too. Who knows? That's where life goes. But there's this innate feeling that when they work with you, when they come over to Theoria, they're going to be getting much more personalized care from a label side than they would anywhere else.
Absolutely. And like, I just really want to emphasize like the amount of coaching that goes into all of it. And like with artist development, again, it's not like just putting your songs out. A lot of bands think that as soon as they're signed to a label, they're like done, they're set, you know, the label's just going to take care of everything. But actually that's the artist has to like step up at that point, you know, they have to evolve with everything. And like a lot of that comes a lot of coaching and stuff that they're not used to. Like even now, like bands, like a lot of coaching I do recently is just like how to navigate TikTok. A lot of bands don't know how to use the creative outlets like that, and how social media is constantly changing. And man, there's something I also see a lot of times happen with bands is like they'll fall into ruts, and a lot of being like a coach and an artist manager is getting them out of those ruts. It only takes one member to fall into one too, and then before you know it, everybody's all out of whack. I've had it happen multiple times on Theoria too, where I've had to like coach a band out of like the struggles of hell basically and get them back to like realizing that they have an awesome art and people believe in them and they can really crush it if they just pick themselves up out of this. It's not always going to be fun. At the end of the day, like you said before, it's art mixed with business, you know, it's that fine line there that has to be like navigated properly. It's a big duality.
It is a gigantic duality, and the fact that you have that awareness of that duality when bands might not necessarily do it, because I mean, think about it. When you were younger, you know, when you guys were just starting out in bands with the Sound Like Wolves, and all of a sudden all the other things you're doing, a lot of these people are in the exact same position. A lot of these people that are signing your label, you know, they're in their late teens or maybe sometimes early 20s, where when we think about it, you may have had much more of this insulated experience from having to deal with some of the more business issues because it necessarily didn't matter, because you were going through school, because you were going through all these different other aspects. But now when this is your primary focus and your primary goal, when you're trying to get into the music business, yes, music is art, but business is business. You're not as heavily focused in on some of these things because they're just not as interesting. They're not as fun. They're not the crazy, sexy things that we like to do. However, there's something that still needs to be dealt with. There's things that need to be done so that when you get to be on a record label, yeah, you're not done yet. It's kind of like you do have to step up because you're like graduating to the next level, basically, in that sense. Now you've got signed to a label. Now you got to step up. It's like, where can you continue to go next? There's a lot of things you might not find interesting about the business side of it, but you have to have the discipline, the wherewithal to know that that's going to come in there. And yes, that can cause people to get in ruts a lot. It's gotten me in ruts with the podcast. I know you probably experienced that yourself as well, not only working with these bands, but from your own perspective. But that knowledge and that understanding of this is where these things come from to help coach these bands back to getting out of ruts, while also understanding the fact that you have the music side of the music business, the business side of the music business, and how do we make it so that your product and your music, your art continues to stay as creative and as passionate as possible, continue to be put out there for so many people to support, while also still being able to maximize out in the business side.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking about ruts too, something that I try to coach bands and all the time with is like, stop looking at numbers and obsessing over numbers so much, especially on Spotify. Like,
yeah,
fans don't care about how many numbers you have. They care about your interaction with them and then like what you can give to them, you know, like what they can take away from your music. That's honestly why much as I like hated TikTok when it first came out, I've like learned to love it in the sense that it's like a great way for music discovery. Like, just trying to get bands to navigate that and realize that like it's not just about it's not anymore about just creating the best song. It's like how to make a really good song resonate with people and get it out there. And like bands look at monthly listeners as a big thing. Monthly listeners aren't real fans. They're a lot of times those are just manipulated through like passive discovery, like all their algorithmic playlists and stuff. Like you could have some bands that have like 300,000 monthly listeners or something not be able to draw more than a couple people outside their hometown. You know, it's just like, how can you take your music and create a fan with it? That's what we really try. How can you resonate your art with somebody else? You know, that's something we really try to do at Theoria, and it's every band's completely different. You know, so what something I love doing is trying to figure out how I can take a band, given what is realistic for them, what they can realistically do. Like, I mean, a lot of these bands have they all have full-time jobs outside of this. They have like wives and kids sometimes. They all have things that they have to juggle on top of this creative outlet that they have, and they also have 3 to 4 other people with them that also have these different struggles, these different like time restraints and stuff, you know. So you have to take what a band can realistically do and find a way to capture fans, you know, to whether it's them touring, whether it's them not being able to tour so much, you have to kind of figure out creative outlets when things to use with TikTok or like social media to get people engaged, maybe make a Discord server to resonate with fans. Like it's all like symptom prescription with different bands. Just really finding out what works for them. And it's something that I really love to do with Theoria because part of developing a band is really finding out what kind of they can do realistically without burning themselves out. Because the last thing you want to do is burn the band out. And it's like talk about ruts. That happens all the time just because it's just really hard to keep up with everything. You know, like it's trying to take your passion and really get it out to the people sometimes comes with like some drawbacks, you know. So yeah, something we just really love to do is just like trying to figure out what really makes a band work and what works for them.
Yeah, because the world's not a cut and dry place. It's not the same way that it was, let's say, 40, 45 years ago, where it's, okay, folks, I'm putting out the best songs and hoping that a label picks you up, because it gets where a lot of the point in time where, you know, when people got signed to a label, that's when they made it, because now you've got the financial backing behind the music and they're going to take care of the rest. But now in today's day and age, it's completely different due to the amount of competition that is out there in terms of other bands trying to compete for everyone's attention. It's not trying to like, it's best way is right. You're trying to compete for everyone's attention. What's going on social media, because you're the ones that have to create it. You have to be marketing on that aspect as well. And in terms of streaming, of course, as much as we don't want to have to look at Spotify numbers or monthly listeners, it's something that at times we do have to look at and be aware of, due to the fact of how we know how different, not only some labels, but also venues and, you know, talent bookers, how they take a look at that and take some of those as much more true. Because the reason behind that, in my personal opinion, is due to the fact that it is a tangible number that they can rank people in, and they can order, and it makes sense in the mind of people. So that's where I kind of take a look at it. However, it is tough when you have so many other issues that you, or not issues, but other responsibilities, you know, full-time jobs, wife and kids. You could be taking care of a different family member. It's just, there's a lot of different things in life that are making it tougher due to the fact that we do have more responsibilities and we have to wear many more hats, not only as an artist or band, but any kind of creative has to do stuff like that. So it's tougher when you have to try and be perfect at so many different things and stand out in so many different ways. But when you take a step back and you actually have people like you at Theoria that are willing to work with these bands to figure out how can we make this work with what you are doing, with what other responsibilities you have, and how can we make your music stand out for it, so that, you know, even when it comes to, people always want to look at Spotify numbers, people always want to look at Apple Music numbers or whatever streaming numbers there are. But people are still going to want to look at, you know, how are you connecting? How are you building those fans? How are you building those relationships? Two bands stand out to me in that standpoint, where when you look at their Spotify numbers, they aren't nearly as what you think they would be. But when you look at their interaction with people online and how they create fans that way, it is so much better. One is Opal and Sky, where they don't have much music out. They're from Canada. It's the two twins that are always all over, you know, metal TikTok or metal Instagram reels, whatever it is, always posting a bunch of crazy videos. Their fan base is huge out there online. But yeah, Spotify numbers aren't necessarily there. But again, that's not where the focus is. Or we mentioned them right before we started recording. And if you want to go check out my episode with this guy, it's literally right before this one, Tom Kiley from Patient 67. They have maybe over 100,000 Spotify monthly listeners, which isn't nearly as much as you think the band would have. But you look at the people that they have on social media and how they connect with them. my God, that is like the
Yeah, it's
gold
incredible.
standard that you guys should look at. So there's plenty of bands that you guys can go out and look at and try and figure out what works for them. Why does it work? Reverse engineer it and figure out how it works for yourself. But Cody, when you have yourself there as a label runner and people that an artist coach that's going to help out with that, not only does that help you discover what's going to be best for these artists going forward and help them implement that, but how does this work for each individual artist so that they stand out? Because not every artist is going to blow up the same way Bad Omens did. Not every artist is going to blow up the same way Sleep Token did. Not everyone's going to have that same impact that Spirit Box had over the past 3 years. But there are going to be things we can learn from how they did it to figure out how to make Spotify, Apple Music, TikTok, Instagram, any social media platform work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head on a lot of that stuff. And that's all the fun with it. Another thing I encourage bands to do, like say that they, again, you're always defined by like what your members can do. Um, Especially developmental bands, like the weekend runs are fantastic for like a developmental band who's not really apt to touring too much. They have to juggle full-time jobs. Like a band can't just quit their full-time job to go out and touring and stuff. It's just not feasible. You have to do it strategically. You have to have like the want for you to tour out there, you know. So what I love about like developmental bands is you can book a weekender or two weekenders with like bands within your region. You each do a headline show in your hometowns. Each shows are really good. You don't have to lose your jobs. And you take a photographer out with you too. And you just get a bunch of content and stuff for that. And then you just post it all throughout the weeks. And then it looks like from an outside perspective that you're absolutely killing it, because a lot of the industry anymore is just smoke and mirrors. And you know, especially with how TikTok is too, like you want to be playing shows as much as possible, but just so you can show that you're a real band behind all that content, you know. Like you see some bands that have like never played shows before, but they're like blowing up on TikTok and stuff. But if you mix both of them together and strategically do it without burning your band out, again with what the members individually have in their personal lives, you can really create some magic happen and really make a lot of traction for the bands to help them grow. So like a lot of being an artist manager is really just trying to figure out that happy medium between the duality of your personal lives and the band with what they can realistically do to get more fans.
Oh, 100%. And even like a band that's, again, I brought them up with Opal and Sky, a band that's blowing up online, but you try and find live show stuff on them, it's really not there because they don't play that many live shows. And again, it's the limitation there. When I asked them about it, it was all the money behind touring and trying to play live. But what you brought about those weekend runs, that just sparked something in my mind, because you said it's like, okay, you know, you have these weekend runs where you're going and playing with bands within your region, and you're going to like their hometowns and then you're playing those shows, but the headliner, whoever is from that hometown, that is an incredible idea, especially if like 3 bands in a region, you're going to play 3 different shows in all their hometowns, due to the fact that you know there's going to be a good amount of people that come out for that hometown show, for that band that's headlining, but they're also going to get to experience these other bands as well. So you know you're going to be getting yourself in front of people that like that kind of music, that are there to support local music, supporting new bands, and continually having that feverish pitch and want to be able to become fans of other bands. That is such a smart idea for a developmental band. I can't believe that I didn't even think of that myself, because it makes so much sense, and it's so cost effective for bands when it comes to having those responsibilities you still have to maintain, and maybe not having them as much financial backing for the band as you would want.
100%. And like really one of the biggest things for an emerging band too is just networking. Like, yeah, you gotta understand the other bands are not like, you see so much stuff where it seems like a big competition. Like it's the other bands should be your allies all the time. They're the only people who understand what you're going through, have the same passion as you, and you can help each other out all the time. Like show swaps are a huge thing. Just and before you know it, you're doing a bunch of these weekenders, like say on the East Coast. Before you know it, you'll have enough connections in all those areas around your hometown, other states. It'll just keep growing and growing that you can sustain a headliner, like a 2-week headliner where you're actually drawing people. You made real fans in those areas, and you couple that with like social media and especially TikTok. Before you know it, you've created more and more fans. Another thing I always try to coach bands to is to be humble and engage people. Like you're a performer, not only just on stage, but now on the whole landscape of social media as well, you know? And if somebody makes a video for you on TikTok, go into those comment sections and start talking to the people in the comments. Like, just most people on TikTok, if they see that you're in a band and they like your band a lot, they don't know that you have a full-time job, do all this other stuff. That you're
Mhm.
looked at as like a famous person. So when you like, it's ridiculous sometimes, but so like when you make a comment back on some of those posts, like you made that person's day. You made a whole fan there. You gave them an experience, you know. Then they're gonna go follow you on all sorts of outlets. It's insane how powerful a 45-second clip on TikTok can be anymore. You know, but it's also all about the bands to go in there and make the most of it.
Yeah, because we've seen bands have those viral moments where they just pop off, but then nothing really comes of it. And the big question is why. And one of the main things I see is just like, okay, you didn't capitalize on the fan engagement aspect of it. Of course, there are bands that I've seen that have absolutely capitalized on the fan engagement aspect of it, and they have really gotten a lot of traction.
Patient
But
67's.
Patient 7 is a great one.
Yeah,
Catch Your
great one.
Breath is another fantastic example of that when Dial Tone got big on TikTok, and see what
Oh
they're
yeah,
doing.
that
I
was
mean,
nuts.
literally in March and April, they're going out supporting Breaking Benjamin. Like
I
that,
did see that. That is crazy.
that's
Huge
wild.
congrats.
But again, it still speaks to the standpoint of just there's so many different ways you can create fans, and when you take the time to really do that, especially when it comes to no matter how big you are, if you have the ability to take the time to just speak to people, you make that person's day. I even think about it myself too, where it's even if I reach out to a band potentially be on the podcast, they're not the biggest band in the world, they're not really that big. But when you reach out back to me and you give me a response, it's even if it's a yes, we want to do it, no, just not at this time. I'm happy myself, even just because I was able to get that sort of connection with you, whether it's positive or negative, or just, maybe not more like not necessarily positive, maybe it's like a yes or a no type thing. But if I even comment on something and I see someone just like the post, now it's a lot more powerful when it's a direct comment and you can have that interaction back and forth. But even if myself, I post a comment on a band's page and all of a sudden I see that they just liked it, or if the label likes it, okay, someone still took the time to read it and they enjoyed it. So now there's some buildup there. There's some sort of connection there that makes me potentially want to go check them out more, because I know that they even took the time out of their day just to have some sort of acknowledgement. And it happens for us humans. If we like something and we like a band, that acknowledgement can go so far and so long, no matter if you are, a 15-year-old girl that is in absolute love with one band or one artist, or if you're a 45-year-old guy who only likes one band and everything else is bad, but that one band comments on, you're like, now I'm happy.
Still though.
Still though.
No, I hear that, man. I remember, hell, like I remember like a couple years ago, I just posted a Motion City soundtrack, like a couple of my Motion City soundtrack vinyl, and just having the vocalist of that band just comment on it, like, made my whole week. I was like, holy shit, this guy, like, what's he doing? Like, even seeing this right now, that's awesome. But yes, I mean, that it goes such a far way, and especially now, like, it's that's something I started recently doing, is having Discord servers for bands too, and just seeing how like a local community can thrive like that, just all centered around just like the like for a band, is just crazy to me. Like, we live in one hell of a time to really get information out there and really like connect this over a passion, over a hobby or something, or a band. It's crazy. And yeah, bands just really have to capitalize on that if they really want to start succeeding with stuff. There's just so much competition now in the sense of how many bands are releasing stuff. You really just have to find that niche and grab hold of it and really just be able to connect.
Yeah, and when we bring about competition too, because like we said, other bands are going to be your greatest allies throughout all of this. But it's not like a competition where you're just trying to beat down some other band. It's what we mean by competition is there are so many bands that are trying to put out music at this exact same time right now. And there's music that comes out every single day, and every single Friday is New Music Friday. And if you're if you're a metalcore fan and follow Mr. Alan Harrington, aka the Red Herring, on Twitter, just every Friday you see a list of what bands are releasing new albums that day, new EPs, new songs, and dude,
It's insane.
The dude puts threads of like 9-10 tweets together of just bands, and it's like, this is nuts. Yep. But at that point, you see how many people are releasing music, and the thing that you're competing for is like the attention of people in that moment, because we can all like different bands. We can all like a number of bands. I went to 52 shows last year, and only 2 of them I got to see my favorite band of all time. So that's 50 shows that I went to where I like a lot of those bands, but they're not my favorite. So I can expand my bandwidth there. But during the day, if I'm listening to something, I have to take time to listen to this stuff. So you're competing for that time for that discovery. Once you get that time for that discovery, now it's okay. Now you're opening up and everything. And a lot of people have a lot of time to be able to do some of this stuff. But with how many people are releasing music, you got to find a way to just know that you got to break through that point in time to get to that discovery point where people are able to want to check you out and know that you're there and hit that button, whether it's on streaming, whether it's on YouTube, or whether it's just that like button on Facebook. And even a social interaction like that where, hey, they discover you, they comment on something, and you put a comment back, not just a stock comment, a genuine comment. You don't know how far that goes, man. It goes so far.
Yeah, that's why it's so important, because like you said, like you're competing for people's screen time anymore, and like that's why it's like everything's just so oversaturated. That's why you see bands dropping singles, like the rappers and stuff anymore, just because like you have to be in everyone's newsfeed all the time, or it's gonna be oversaturated by all the other bands out there. Like that's why you see the 6-week release cycle all the time now. Which I personally I remember just the days of just like going into an FYE and just like finding like a CD and just listen, like digesting a whole album. It's not like that anymore. You have to just play a singles game, just because with all these digital service providers like Spotify and stuff, there's really no barrier of entry to put music out anymore. Like I forget off the top of my head how many songs get uploaded to Spotify every day, but it's like this astronomical number.
Was it like 60,000?
It's something like absurd. It's ridiculous, but there's no barrier of entry anymore. Like you don't even have to have a band to put music out. You don't have to have like a level of production quality anymore. You can just put as much music out and then pitch it to a curator, which gets pitched to the top of the line music, like bands out there. Like it's all the same. It's all the same platform. So you have to constantly make something that is unique to yourself and find a way to reach fans that way. Yeah, there's just absolutely no barrier of entry anymore. So you have to find what really makes you special and stand out.
Don't get me wrong. I do love the fact there's no barrier to entry anymore, because then anybody has a chance to get their music out there. We're not beholden to certain gatekeepers of labels, of radio DJs, airtime, anything like that. But, without that barrier to entry, now there are other issues that end up coming into play. And the big issue is again, if there's 60,000 songs uploaded to Spotify every single day, take that times by 7, that's 420,000 songs on average a week. So you're trying to compete with not only the new stuff, but there's a lot of people out there that are just curmudgeons and they don't want to hear anything new if they're past the age of like 23. So you got to try and find a way to break through to them as well. The barrier to entry is gone, but now you're not just competing to try and get that airplay that's going to be forced into people. You're trying to break that like barrier of, how do I compete with these other bands for that screen time, for that stream time? How do we get to the point where we're the ones that people are trying to select, or the ones that are being popped up by them? And of course, being able to reverse engineer the Spotify algorithm or Apple Music algorithm, being able to figure out what's going to hit on YouTube, Spotify, app, or anything, or YouTube's TikTok, Instagram, whatever it's going to be. That's a huge key. But always, I remember we brought up some of the Scent Like Wolves too with your episode back there. It's not about trying to make music that's just going to hit on those platforms because it's going to sound shallow. It's find a way to take your art, your creative, your passion, and figuring out what you can do with that passion and how you can make that work on some of these platforms as well. Because once you take that passion out of there, you take that art out of there, you take the music out of the music business and you're just business, trust me, those ruts and the burnout is just going to last longer and potentially be permanent.
No, absolutely. And that's really something I look for in Theoria a lot. It's just like a couple things. Like I want like really good production quality. So a band that like understands like, hey, I have to we gotta compete for screen time with all these other giant bands out there. Like I have to have just as good as production quality as them. But also I want like bands that I can believe in, and with a lot of that becomes not just what the band can do, but how they are as individual people, And a lot of that comes with a lot of personality that reflects on their art too. So it's just really cool to Just find some of those bands that really just kind of have like the full package. They have the drive behind it. They're willing to listen to the coaching behind everything. They're willing to adapt, and they're humble about the whole thing and just overall enjoying their craft. I think the
Yeah.
worst thing that I find is when bands do burn out and when they start to resent their art that they created just because of all the stuff that happens in the business and the industry behind it, or just you see on social media, everybody just talks about their wins. Nobody ever talks about the losses, the many, many, many losses that took to get to that one win, you know? So I always tell bands too, like, if you're like really burnt out, just like stay off of social media for a little
Mm.
bit. Like you don't need to see these big numbers games and people just talking about all how all their numbers are really big. That's not healthy to engage in all that stuff. Just like take a break from it and just overall enjoy the art that you created.
Or even when it comes to the social media side too, you're absolutely right. Everyone posts their wins. I remember I took a look back at like even my Facebook stuff too. Yeah, I looked at Facebook for this one to see what my top posts were for the year. And of course, with the top, almost they were like positive and everything. But I took a look at the ones that I didn't speak about things that were so positive. I didn't speak about the wins, speaking about the losses specifically. And I had 2 posts that I spoke about the losses on. Those 2 were 2 of my 10 top posts of the year. The only 2 that I spoke negative on were the 2 of the top 10. And the reason was because, in my opinion, is when it comes to everyone speaking about their wins and the numbers, we're all used to that. We're all conditioned to that.
Yep.
And it's social media. It is the highlight reel of life, basically, or what people want you to see. It's like it's your highlight tape that you're trying to get when you're trying to get recruited by a college coach, so that you can't say, "Oh, it was my knee," or "Coach didn't send in my tape," stuff like that. But if you post some of the negative stuff too, and this is what you have to make sure you're comfortable with this too. When you post stuff that isn't as highlighty or as doesn't necessarily have that positive feel to it, maybe it's like, okay, this is the reality of where the band is right now. Or from my standpoint, it was, this is the reality of where the podcast was, and I'm actually struggling with this. Like, this ain't going well. Being open and honest about that actually did better. And I think it's due to the fact that now people see the reality behind it. It's not
Absolutely.
all smoke and mirrors. It's not all just win, 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 win. When people see that there is actual struggle behind it, now you start to create more of this realism behind it because it is real. And people get behind that because when we think about it, people love fiction. People love fantasy stuff. People love a lot of that. But people also love reality TV, even though a lot of it's made up, because of the feeling that it is real. But when you get a lot of real true crime documentaries, because they happen, when you have that truth behind there and people can actually get behind it and say, this is truthful, they connect with it so much more deeply that you just want to be a part of it and you want to go for it. Now, can you experience burnout? Do you potentially want to go off social media sometimes? Yeah, and sometimes that's absolutely healthy. But I'm also saying where it's, if you're just posting all your wins, okay, I get it. But sometimes post about a loss that was there, because it adds so much more realism and connection to the fans as well.
Yep.
We all go through losses ourselves as fans. If we see a band that's potentially going through something like that and they post about it, now we connect with that even more. We resonate with that even more. And there's a passion behind it. And you're not just speaking about your struggles or losses when you're singing your songs or you're creating your music. Now you're actually putting them out more of them. They're more in a less metaphorical sense than what you would with your music.
Yep. And everyone loves a come up story too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like everyone wants to see how you like people can relate. Like I love the connection stuff you put in there. Like it really is all about connection, resonating with people. And like when you can show that you're a real person behind this band that people look at on like this pedestal, a lot of times it just really resonates with fans too. And honestly, some of the best lessons I've ever learned in life are when I've crashed and burned, like on stage or with a business. Or my God, I've failed so many times as a drummer. Like I've had my whole drum set fall off the stage. I've had like it just completely end the show. I've had like our samples break in the middle of the show, or like shoot the click track through the crowd, or just like terrible things that like. But like you're defined by how you overcome those situations and grow from them. And I like really like working with bands who can have like a bad experience like that, but grow from it and see some sort of benefit from that experience that they had. Like I know me, every time something bad happens like that to me, I'm just like, I'll be driving home, gripping my steering wheel, just like, I'm never gonna let that happen again. I have to do this much better, or like, wow, this didn't work this way. How can I pivot or think differently to overcome this, or to make this situation just again that never happen again.
Yeah,
So
experience.
yeah.
I was
I'm
like,
sorry.
experience is the mother of all learning, man. It really is. Because even from
Yep.
my standpoint as well, 2022 took a look at everything just financially. I realized that I had spent $11,000 trying to promote the podcast in different ways, and none of it worked out. Now, that's a huge chunk of change. And when I actually admitted it to myself, it's like, okay, I'm not going to let that happen again. And then to try and make the podcast even better for 2023, I spent even more money of my own, but I put it in different avenues. And this is the best way to put it. I started the year with just 650 subscribers. I ended the year with over 4,000. So
Hell yeah, man. That's
definitely
awesome.
looking at it, I'm like, okay, I learned from that standpoint too, gripping the steering, like, I'm not going to let that happen again. And having the motivation and understanding that experience is going to be the mother of all learning. Of course, I don't want every single band or every single artist to have to go through a big financial hit like that. So also learn from our stories, learn from our experiences. But also, if you have those experiences as well, don't feel like so bad about them where you have to hide them. You can understand them, that other people go through them. They're negatives, and they happen, so you can learn from them. But at the same time, if you use those and potentially bring them up on social media as a way to just put it out there, so then no one can hold that information against you, or now you actually have that realism bit behind there. Now you have that, what you said, people like a come up story, a comeback story. I mean, Rocky didn't win Best Picture in 1976 because Sylvester Stallone's acting was top notch. That story of a boxer who's on kind of like, should be long retired by now, especially after not being on like the come up in his early 20s, getting a shot at the title and going the distance. Yeah, people resonate with that kind of a story. People can resonate with your story as well when there's realism behind it, when there is actual reality behind it. If you post all the wins, that's great and everything, but it just kind of takes away from the human side of it, like social media has to so many people.
Yep, and that's why it gets discouraging, just because nobody really posts that. They just post their numbers all the time and stuff. But again, just like I was talking about with like booking weekenders and stuff, and just like it's all about networking with other bands. Like we talk about competition all the time, but like it's want to emphasize too, those bands they've gone through the same experiences that you have. Most of them all have, I always call it, I always joke with my business partner, I call it the trials and tribulations of a emerging metalcore band. Like all the situations happen, and you're the only ones who can understand it with each other. So just don't be afraid to talk about that stuff. But a lot of people do, because they look at it as like losing face. But it's really not. I honestly respect bands a lot more when they just kind of tell me some of their horror stories and how they overcame them and how they plan to do better next time. It's all learning and growing, and like talking about how much money you spent in advertising. Man, I've done the same for my label, for my bands. Like you have to do all of that stuff to learn what works, what doesn't work. And again, what works for one band is not going to work for every band. Every band is so variable in their success and what makes their success happen. So it's just really, unfortunately, just kind of playing the game and figuring out what works and just kind of growing from it. And at the end of the day, just realizing that you got into this for your love for your art and not to ever lose sight of that, because that's overall what's going to project you forward.
Oh, absolutely. And I do want to go back to what you said about, bands are going to be your biggest allies, even though it's, you're still competing for all that like screen time and whatnot. But you take a look at the bands that are like really blowing up from different eras in time and see how closely connected they are. And I'll use a perfect example of this recent tour that just got announced. Asking Alexandria, Memphis May Fire, and The Word Alive all came up around the same time. Definitely they have variables, different sizes, but all three of them are still incredibly successful. And all three of them are going out on tour together. And it works because when you're connecting with other bands and you're networking with other bands and you're creating those friendships, now as they come up, they're going to want to see you do the same thing too. They'll all of a sudden say one band starts really gaining traction and they're going to go on like a regional run or something. If you're tight with them and you're constantly working with them, promoting them and everything as a band yourself, you might get to go tag along too. And all of a sudden now you're going on this tour as well. Might not be the headliner, but you're going to still be playing in front of people that you could potentially change to become your own fans. And what's the phrase? A rising tide raises all ships. Yeah, if we're rising, it's going to bring everybody else up. Again, take a look at the past. You specifically use 2022 and 2023. The rise of Bad Omens and Sleep Token has put more eyes and ears on the rock and metal genres than any other moment in the past maybe 15 to 20 years. And I know Bring Me the Horizon's doing a great job with that too. But nothing's had that much of an impact over the past 10, 20 years when radio DJs and tastemakers kept saying rock is dead, rock is dead, rock is dead, than what these two bands have done the past 2 years.
Absolutely. I mean, just another band to throw in there, I think that's incredible, is Lorna Shore. Like their guys, it was ridiculous. Like seeing them play at like Coachella and stuff, that would have been, if you would have told me that, like, I don't know, like 5 years ago, I'd been like, no way.
You throw Knock Loose in there too. Knock Loose is the exact same thing.
Exactly, dude. That's absolutely insane. And it's just, you see like Billie Eilish standing behind the scenes at like a Knock Loose show and stuff. Like that is, seeing pop and transcend with metal is look at Spirit Box's cover with with Megan Thee Stallion. That was crazy. Like I would have never checked that off on my bingo card, you know?
Yeah, crazy. Was it something that I'm like, oh, Megan Thee Stallion and Spirit Box, do I really want to check it out? It's like, personally for myself, might not be what I want to check out, but the worst thing I could have done was to damn it and bastardize it and say it was not good, because there's be a lot of people that want to go check it out. You know what? What's my place to tell people, oh no, don't go check it out because there's some artist on there that I'm not a big fan of? No. Check it out, because what might happen? You might like it. All of a sudden, as Megan Thee Stallion fans, you might like Spirit Box, see what they have. Now you're going to go check out more of their stuff. Oh my God, we've got more people coming into rock and metal. Oh dear Lord, this is such a terrible thing. Come on.
Yeah, the gatekeepers will hate all that. But you know what? I hate when people like bash on that kind of stuff. As soon as I saw that, I was like, this is such a huge win for rock and metal. Like, I don't care all the publications that say it's not, or like people bash on Demi Lovato for trying to get into rock and metal. Like, let that happen. It's just going to allow more people to digest metal and hard rock.
Yeah, even like when MGK tried getting back into pop punk in like 2020, it was like, I looked at him like, you know, there's a lot of people that had opinions on it, and I was still on the belief, I'm like, you know what, just let him try. If it's something that doesn't go well, okay, whatever. As a gatekeeper, you're still going to be happy about that. But if it's not, you know what, more kids are going to end up jumping into this because they like that sound, and they're going to check out the other stuff that's going on around there. That's how you guys all got into this genre too. There was one band or one artist or one moment that started out for you. Why not continue on with that? Because that's how we're going to continue to grow the genres, so we don't have to consistently hear that rock is dead or metal is dead or whatever people are saying.
Yeah, 100%. They're always going to say something's dead, but absolutely. And like the genres need to innovate, and by doing so, they almost have to have more genre blenders. That's why I love seeing like a lot of dark pop put into music, like like Sleep Token. I think Sleep Token really transcended and changed some boundaries in how people listen to music. So it takes a lot of like dark pop influences, and it's more digestible to people who aren't just going to listen to progressive metal all the time, you know? It made it a lot more tangible to a huge audience of people. Or like MGK getting into pop punk, like that really innovated the area of like emo rap and stuff, you know, like Spotify teardrop playlist. Like it's just all those, it's just the new version of pop punk, you know. It's great. I also hate when people like trash on bands like Bring Me the Horizon for like changing their sound up a bit. Like, I don't want the same album over and over again, but like if you look at what Bring Me the Horizon did, they're always on like a whole like level above everybody else. And like bands even to this day are trying to replicate like their old albums. You know, they're just like, and that's awesome, because what that does is it innovates the genre every time they come out with a new album, basically. It's incredible. It's progression.
I'll say pretty much, yeah. Perfect example of it is literally Bring Me the Horizon, starting with Sempiternal, because Sempiternal, there's like that's like a junction point when it comes to metalcore between pre-Sempiternal and post-Sempiternal because of what they did on that album, and then, you know, adding more behind it, more of this arena rock style with That's the Spirit. They got much more experimental with Amo, which personally I did not care for. But then, of course, you know, I knew there was still some stuff there for me when they came out with the first post-human EP with Survival Horror. My God, did I love that thing. I was like, yeah, let's just keep this rolling. And the more you let bands get, more we don't gatekeep bands and let them continue to innovate, the better off these things get. That's when we get Bad Omens coming out with The Death of Peace of Mind. That's when we get Lorna Shore going off and turning deathcore into something much, much more excitable around the world. And then you have other bands that are like Sorry Prevail come in and add more to it. Then you get something like what Sleep Token did, where I still see people all the time say, oh, this isn't metal. They just gatekeep it. I'm just like, you know what? We have been, people, like, even especially as gatekeepers, you've been begging for new stuff, and you've been begging that, you know, people, like, we don't want to constantly see Metallica take over. And when they found out that Take Back Eden was streamed 100 million times more than 72 seasons, and they're like, well, Sleep Token isn't real metal. What more do you want? What more
does that
do you
even
want
mean anymore? You know, like I hate talking about genres with people. Like even just trying to define what metalcore is anymore. It's like you're gonna get people say that like Knocked Loose is metalcore. You're gonna get people say that Killswitch Engage and like Chimera are the only metalcore. Then you got like it's metalcore singing and screaming. And you have some people are like, nah, there can't be any singing and all. It's just like ridiculous. It just enjoy music, you know. Post-hardcore is another one. Trying to define that with people is just nuts.
I kind of look at like, if I try and define it like tangibly for people, like what do I think metalcore is, what post-hardcore is, like I couldn't do it. But if you let me listen to something, I'm like, okay, there's certain elements that I can just sonically feel. I'm like, okay, this is where metalcore comes in, this is where post-hardcore comes in. So I look on the good old metalcore and post-hardcore subreddits, and whenever they bring up a band, there's always people, this isn't metalcore. I saw a huge one on the metalcore subreddit of people just going crazy trying to figure out if Ice Nine Kills was metalcore or not. And they're like, oh no, not since 2013. All this new stuff is just crap. I'm just like,
it's all just a gimmick. You know,
really?
I hate that stuff too. It's like obviously the gimmick is like it's worked for them to transcend their sound that you loved to everybody now. And now that's probably why you don't like them as the gatekeeper, is because you don't like that they're so popular now. It's just like, I don't know. You can't please it. You can't please everybody.
Yeah, even going oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, talking about something that really burns bands out too, and like it took me a long time to get deal with this. Is just trolls on the internet. Like people are absolutely ruthless. Like for instance, just a Ascent Like Wolves, we got a comment on our new video. We have this, in my opinion, a beautiful animated music video. Like somebody hand drew all of the stuff. It's like an anime, and the comment was, I am unreasonably angry that Marcus Vick doesn't look like Marcus Vick in this anime. It's just like, that's what you took from this awesome piece of artwork right here, you know? Or just like, I don't know, I'll like run ads on bands, and just like some of the comments you get on there where it's just like trash. Like it's that you just said trash to somebody's art that is just like honestly incredible. It's like, what kind of person are you to do something like that? So, but you see it's so much, like there's so many trolls out there that I see my bands that I work with get burned out all the time, where they'll like send me a screenshot and be like, yo, what should I say about this? Like I have this whole thing planned out. And I'm like, don't say anything about the comment. Just let it go. Or that's what they want you to do, you know? Something I've been trying to coach bands to is taking a negative comment and turning it into a fan, which like trolls aren't expecting you to just be like, hey man, I'm sorry you think this is trash, but like, thanks for checking it out and appreciate your feedback. What have you been listening to lately? Like they get completely taken back by that. I had one person I did that to, and they were just like, you know what, man, I'm sorry I posted this. I just woke up and was in a really bad mood. Been really into the new Slaughter to Prevail album, you know, and I'm just like, cool, okay, there you go. Right away, you took a really negative experience that could have just made two people arguing back and forth look ridiculous and made it into a positive fan.
Yeah, it's like there's really three ways you can go about it when it comes to a troll comment. If you know it's a troll comment, one is just completely ignore it. I know like you get burnt out because if you constantly see them like that, but you know, it just happens. Two is what you said, like try and convert them fan, like, you know, react with kindness, or just come after, like, just, you know, just be, you know, try and create them as a fan, try and turn them into that, try and reach out and have this connection point because they're not expecting it. Or three, you could basically go the Ronnie Radke route and threaten to beat them up. But I again,
that somehow only works for him.
It only works for him. And like there's times I'm like, I keep watching, I'm like, I'm actually kind of enjoying this. But if ever anyone else tried to do it, I'd just be like, now yours coming off is just not like, what are you doing? When it comes to Ronnie, I'm just like, I don't know why. I just find it funny. Like the whole thing he's going on now with Sanguis Sugabog, I'm just like,
I was just gonna say that. That's hilarious.
I'm like, at some point in time, I was like, the past couple of days I've been looking, I'm like, this is funny. There's gonna come a point in time I'm like, okay, now I'm just getting sick and tired of this. Like, can we just stop this point right now? Because we're kind of just dragging this on. But like, I've got negative comments too with all the podcast stuff, and there's times where I've reacted where it's, okay, I'm trying to turn you into a fan. Like, okay, let's respond with some positivity. Let's reach out about that. But then this is where I always like it. If you're going to troll me, reach out with positivity and you're going to come back and just keep trolling me. Now I've got free reign to do whatever the heck I feel like. And that's when I always like kind of go with the, oh, hey, you know, but hey, you click the like button, or hey, you comment on here. So thanks for helping push us in the algorithm. Something like that. Just really, or at that point too, if someone just starts to like, it kind of comes down the attack on me, well, now you can see where it started, and you know it wasn't me. So
yeah, and it makes them look like the asshole in the comments then,
exactly.
It's an outside perspective. But if you argue back with them, you both look like idiots.
Yeah. You don't want to go full on and argue with a whole, like go on and argue with a troll or argue with someone like that, because then people are going to constantly be looking at it. And again, like Hannah brought up with the Ronnie Radke Sango Sugabog thing. At first, I'm like, okay, this is kind of funny, but now I'm at the point where I'm like, this just keeps dragging on and on and on. Like, come on, guys, let's wrap this up. I'm getting sick and tired of this, because I do listen to a lot of Falling Reverse. I have had Sango Sugabog on the podcast before, and it's like,
that's awesome.
I'm like, come on, guys, can we just bring this to a close at some point and not have me see this every time I log on to Instagram or Twitter?
That band's hilarious online, honestly. Like I remember funny. Like their Born of Osiris battles too. It was like publicity because they were both friends, but I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, but
another band, I think.
I was saying the Born of Osiris battles; those were hysterical because you knew
they were so
they were
good.
Just, the back and forth, it was like you would listen, like it was bad, but there was always something there that made you say, like, "Wait, what'd they say?" It's like, yep, you knew it was funny.
I remember the first time I saw it, I was like, "Is Born of Osiris really doing that? Like, what is going on with this band?" And then I was like, "This is absolutely hysterical." That and a band that really gets me all the time is I Set My Friends on Fire. They are hilarious. What they did with When We Were Young Fest.
Yes,
so funny.
that was top notch. Just taking the website web address and just having it sent back to theirs. And then when they were offered, like, hey, can we buy it back? I was like, no.
Yeah.
And then they got put on the festival for it anyway.
Yep.
It's like, now that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that definitely was great. But
that was too good. Okay, Cody, I got two more questions for you. I know you know what one of them is, but I'm going to start out with a different one.
Cool. Shoot.
So the first one is okay, I know everything that you've gone through. When it comes to Theoria, you've done everything there that you're doing right now, which is absolutely fantastic. There's a lot of bands you're working with, but I know you spoke about this, but I want to give like the absolute like soundbite to this so people can understand this. So what is the importance for a younger developmental band to work with someone like you? What's that importance like? Or what's that importance for?
It's just especially not just saying a record label, but we'll just say like a developmental coach, I would say too. That's what like Theoria, like we're not just a label that just distributes music. We're here to do whatever you need us to be and really get you to that next step. The importance really is to just kind of like take you to that next level and just kind of have somebody there that's there to tell you based upon what you have and what the personalities of your bands and what band members are, like how you can really get to that next step. Whether it's like the weaknesses in the band and like building them up, like if it's like just if you have to get better with social media, like we're here to coach you on social media. If it's like you need help with tour booking and getting out there, it's that kind of stuff. With release planning and release management, there's a lot that goes in with that. It's really just about being able to take advice, just knowing your worth too. Like, I mean, bands are always just like, I need a booking agent, a label, and a manager right now. Well, you might not need all those three right now. Like if there's nothing to manage yet, you don't need a manager. You have to really build on all these things and know your place and grow with it. Be humble on where you're at with stuff. And yeah, a lot of that just comes with like just taking advice and just like knowing what you're looking for as a band and ultimately what you want. That's normally my first conversation with bands is like, so what are your goals in the next year? Like, I want to hear realistic responses. Like, we're just really trying to get, like, we're at like 30,000 monthly listeners right now. We're trying to get to a platform of like 100,000 over this next album cycle, where we're really just trying to get it where we're making a little bit of money here, so we can, it's like basically like a wage at like Taco Bell or something, like we're not trying to be like, if I hear a band that's like, I immediately want to go on stadium tours, or I had one band give me a lot of crap one time because they were like, I want to get on a couple dates with Paramore. And I was just like, I'm not going to even reach out about this. This is like, you guys are not even close to something like this yet. Here's what we should focus on right now to eventually maybe get you to a level somehow where you could get something as incredible as that, like you have to know really where your place for stuff is and be humble about it. And just be really open to take advice and just kind of go out of your comfort zone a little bit. Like, I mean, I brought this up a couple times on the podcast now, but one's just like TikTok. Like, it's really hard to get bands, especially like really cool guy metalcore bands, to just kind of like be open to TikTok and just coming out of their comfort zone. I know, like, it took me forever to make TikToks just because every time I make it, I'd be like, I feel so cringy right now. Like, I like am the biggest loser making these things. Like, for a while, I wouldn't even let my roommate hear that I was making them. I just felt like so lame. But then, like, you get over that, and then you see how it starts building, and you see how some of the advice that people give you actually starts working. And I mean, I always say too when I start working with bands, like I'm never here to step on your artistic creativity or like what your vision is for your band. If you want this kind of album art, you want to release things this way, you hate albums, you want to release just singles and EPs, fine. But I'm going to coach you and tell you why I think the things I do, you know. And well, if you don't want to listen to them, we're going to try to find other outlets and ways to really capitalize on what you can do. But again, it's just like I've said this too, like every band's just so variable where it's just really about finding what really works for them and just kind of being able to coach them to figure all that out. But on the band sense, it's being open to all that stuff and just really knowing what your vision is. I've seen a lot of bands that really couldn't even tell me what their vision is, you know, and at that point it's just like, well, what are you striving for, you know? Like, how can I build on something that you don't know what the foundation is?
Oh, totally understandable. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the pitch of, you know, when it comes to a band, you know, some things that can help you out, but also why you should maybe work with Theoria Records. That's the pitch right there. Ooh, yeah, that's what I was going for. So, haha, I got you to pitch your own self. Cody, take
Heck
that.
yeah. Appreciate you, man.
All right, now it's time for my final question before we wrap this one up, which you answered some of the Scent Like Wolves, but now this is time for Do It with Theoria. So, sir, can you give me some recommendations on bands that we should check out from Theoria Records?
Absolutely. One you should definitely check out is Execution Day. They just put out an album, Heal. I think they're an absolutely incredible hard rock and modern metalcore band. I would check out their song Hollow. It's probably one of my personal favorites, or Flourish. We just actually pressed vinyl for them too. So if you like what you hear, definitely pick up a vinyl. They're pretty beautiful, I'd like to say. So yeah, I think they're pretty incredible. An artist I'm really stoked to work with. It's probably the most unique thing I've ever heard. I also brought this up in the Sound Like Wolves one too, but Zombie Shark. If you're into the cyber grind and hearing things you've like talk about genre blenders, like if you're into like deathcore, new metal, grindcore, metalcore, just Nintendo core, like this guy just kind of has it all, and I swear it's just a whole wild ride. Dude's also an incredible artist. His name's Corey Swope. So that band's pretty incredible. A band we're going to be releasing really soon, Monument of a Memory. I think they're really awesome. They're into like Wage War, like Bad Omens, even some like Polaris kind of vibes. Monument of Memory is an awesome up and coming band. They'll be having new music come out pretty soon. Obviously, I think A Scent Like Wolves is pretty rad. A little biased to that one. I think I was talking about defining post-hardcore earlier. I think a really awesome post-hardcore band I have on the label is called The Difference Between. They're really sick if you're into like old school post-hardcore vibes, like Poison the Well, kind of Glassjaw, Oceana, Lower Definition. Love that kind of stuff. Yeah. You want more bands, or I could just keep ranting about them,
I'll say we can go with that because that's like 5 right there, so that is perfectly fine. I mean, there's more that you can check out. So you know what, you answered that question beautifully. So now let's end this podcast with 3 very specific things. So first things first, there are more bands on Theoria for you guys to go check out. I will have not only a list of all those bands in the description of the podcast, but I'm also going to have the link to the Theoria Records website down there for you so you can check them out, know where to go to connect with all of them, and where you connect with the label online as well. Because, of course, Cody, I know you're going to be promoting all these bands as well. It's going to help everyone stay in the know when it comes to all these great bands. And for the ones that are about to release stuff or getting ready to release stuff, Cody, this is also my pitch. Please send them my way because I want to do my part 2 with a podcast just like this with all of them. So make sure you do that. I'm going to have a link description of the podcast for all you guys, so go and check those out. Secondly, of course, man, you know what it's like. You know what I was going to say. I did this with the Scent Like Wolves, but it just keeps coming. I don't know how many rounds I owe you at this point. I'm just going to end up bring the whole case and be like, let's get trashed, buddy. It's on me. I mean, maybe we'll do it on a tour bus at the back of the van, or, sit in the back of the venue shooting dice or something. Who knows what we're going to do, but I'm bringing the beer. That's all I know.
Appreciate the hell out of you, man.
And Cody, once again, man, thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it. I'm glad I got to do this with you, not only with Ascent Like Wolves, but also in the past, the difference between with If Not For Me and now with Theoria Records as well. This is fantastic. Of course, I know I'm bringing you back at some point in the future. I'm going to see you live at some point. At least I hope it's this year. But if I don't, it's got to be sometime next year. Got to make it happen. So this can't be goodbye, my friend. This is, I'll see you later.
See you later. Appreciate you.
Well, folks, I'm an interview with Cody Frain from Theoria Records, and now it's time for Kevin's final thoughts. So this was cool because actually I talked to Cody about the record label that he runs, as we have brought many bands on the podcast from there before. Ascent Like Wolves, Aphasia, Colony Collapse, the difference between when If Not For Me was on label before they moved to In Vogue, even though we have had If Not For Me on since they've been with In Vogue. There's a couple other ones that I do want to bring on and I brought up to Cody, Zombie Shark being one of them, Monument of a Memory, Execution Day. Just watch out. I think Poltergeist has been on the podcast too, but we're going to be bringing more of these bands on too, because I want to continue to support local music, support new music, support regional music, support national music, just keep us promoting, because this is how we get to know all the great new bands. But what Cody had brought up about the importance of being a developmental label makes a lot of sense, because there are so many bands out there that think that getting to signed to a label is the end all be all of it. But let's take a look at a lot of the things that have happened. There have been bands that have gotten on labels, of course, recently that have had a lot of success. But we have seen a lot of bands talk about how the label process and being under a label is restrictive, doesn't allow them to do certain things that they're able to do or want to do, and they have to wait until their contracts run out. We saw that with Nonpoint, with them starting 361 Records, their own record label. We've seen stuff like that happen. We've seen bands go completely independent because they don't want to be part of that process anymore. We've seen While She Sleeps do this as well, especially back in 2021 with the Sleep Society album. Now, why is it important to have these developmental ones? A couple of reasons. One, because, of course, they're not going to be dealing with the biggest bands in the world, which, of course, we all know you want to get up to that point. But this is going to help you out in terms of getting to know the record process, working with a record label, but also having, like Cody said, the most important thing from his standpoint, why you should potentially look at Theoria as your first record label, if you can pitch him, if it's going to work out, is he's going to be there as a coach. Not only as someone who is helping you along, who is going to give you the necessary feedback you need, whether it's positive or negative. At the same time, he understands exactly what you're going through as a band, not only as a band member himself in a band that is not on the label, but as a band member who is on the label at the exact same time as well. So there's a lot there that you're gonna be able to empathize with, connect with, and have more of this understanding behind him, knowing what has to be done in order to grow as a band, what is going to be the best thing for you to do to make sure that the music, stays the art, and stays the passion you use, but make sure that the business side is still the business side, and just keep you kind of accountable at the same time too, and help you prevent those moments of burnout and potential breakdown, so that you still have the passion behind the music that you're creating and the art that you make. So definitely go check them out. Links to the podcast below for Theoria Records. Check out all the bands that are under that label, including Ascent Like Wolves, Aphasia, Colony Collapse, The Difference Between, Execution Day, Monument of a Memory, Poltergeist, and Zombie Shark. Then plus a couple of more as well. Just mentioning the ones that Cody has mentioned, the ones that we've had on the podcast before. Also, make sure you hit subscribe to the Chord Progression Podcast right down here. New episodes every single Tuesday and Thursday, and reaction videos on YouTube every single Friday as well. If you subscribe or follow us on Spotify, Apple Music, or Apple Podcasts, I should say, you get the full episodes every single Tuesday and Thursday there as well. Please like the video and like the episode, as it pushes in the algorithm and helps us out a tremendous amount. Thank you, Cody, for being on the podcast once again, your second time in a week. And yeah, go check out all the Theoria bands that you can. On that note, that's it for you guys. Thank you for watching, listening to the Chord Progression Podcast. My name is Kevin, and you guys know how every single one of these episodes is big, healthy, and hearty. See ya!